Hi, my name is Harry Rock, and I'm your host for another edition of the Westfield Council on Aging Presents. This is a collaborative programming initiative between the Westfield Council on Aging and WCPC Cable Channel 15 with producer Pete Coles. Today's guest is Westfield Council on Aging and Westfield Senior Center Executive Director Tina Gorman. Tina has been the head of the Council on Aging and the Senior Center for 14 years, and prior to that, she taught at Springfield College for 12 years. She grew up in New Jersey before moving here with her husband, Dr. Gary Gorman, who is a regular guest on her weekly WSKB and WCPC 15 show, Wake Up Wednesdays, from 6 to 8 every week. Today, we're going to be discussing beating the blues in older adults. So, Tina, it's kind of different right now because you're normally being the host of your own show, right, and as I have my own show, Rock On Westfield, but right, it's kind of fun that two of us are together because we've never actually shared the interview table.
Well, you're right. We never have.
No, we never have, so it's nice to have you in here with us.
Thank you.
But as the director of the Westfield Senior Center and the Council on Aging, you know, I love the series that you've started to put together. It's a great programming initiative with WCPC 15 and really providing a resource for seniors to be able to listen to help them kind of navigate what we're going through right now with the coronavirus world, as well as just the challenges of aging life.
Right, absolutely. And I appreciate that, Harry, because I think, you know, what we're going to talk about today is what spurred it is obviously we're all dealing with the COVID-19. We're sheltering in place. That creates isolation, which can create sadness in older adults. But the other piece of it is that this is relevant even after we get out of the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. A lot of what we're going to talk about today is relevant for people in their regular life anyway. And although I gear this towards older adults, you know, it's a lot of the to-do list that we're going to talk about as we go along is really relevant to anyone. So hopefully a lot of different people will find this to be useful.
Well, you know what? People are people.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's just, we put a number and we attach it to who they are, but people are people. And as you point out, so much of what seniors are going through or what people in their middle
lots of people are going
life
through
are going through, or younger ones.
And young people.
I, too, was I taught at Springfield College before I came, before I retired. It was following my stint here as the YMCA director. And I saw students, 18 to 22 years old, dealing with so many of these kinds of same issues themselves. So
absolutely.
Really important topic.
Okay.
So let's just jump into it.
Sure.
What does beating the blues really mean?
What's that all about? So, you know, beating the blues, we listen, especially with older people, we hear expressions like, you know, I'm feeling blue, I'm feeling sad, I'm down in the dumps, I'm feeling punk. You know, I hear that a lot. It's a punk day, or, you know, it's just you know, I'm just down in the dumps today. And the medical term for all of that kind of sadness is depression. But I think depression can be a scary term, especially for some older adults. You know, they think mental illness and there's something wrong with me. But that's not really the case, because many people, in fact, probably most people, go through some level of depression at different periods of their life. So we're going to talk about sort of more mild depression, or, you know, just a sadness that, as I said, right now in the middle of this pandemic, we're seeing it sort of in epidemic proportions right now just because of the sheltering in place. So that's what we're going to talk about. But, you know, statistically, about 1/3 of people over the age of 65 experience some form of depression. So the numbers are out there. So I think I'm really a believer in, let's just call a spade, put it on the table. Let's talk about it, because the thing is, there are things that people can do at home right now without medications to overcome some of that sadness. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
When people refer to feeling melancholy, is that really the same thing?
Same thing.
Yeah.
Yep. All of there are a lot of words for it. So yep. And it's however people, whatever word they're most comfortable with.
Right.
So, yep.
So basically anything that's absent of being totally happy.
Well, you know what? No, I wouldn't even say that, Harry, because I think there's a continuum.
Okay.
You know, I mean, in general, we're not either very sad or very happy. We're usually kind of somewhere in the middle. You know, we're sort of content, We have those days where we're happy and excited. We have those days where we do feel kind of punk or kind of blue. Or so, most of us are sort of in that mid-range,
Okay.
which isn't a bad range to be in.
Right.
Just kind of, being, content, I would
Right.
say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great distinction.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's just dive right into it.
Okay. So I want to talk first about recognizing some of the symptoms. How do people know if they're experiencing sadness? Some people have a hard time identifying that. So there are some fairly common symptoms that people may experience. They may not experience all of them. They may experience just a few of them, but they would be things like sleep disturbances, either trouble falling asleep, trouble staying asleep, or sleeping too much. They may see some changes in their appetite. Maybe they're just really not hungry. We do see that a lot with older adults. It's just like, not really feeling up to it. I'm not feeling great. I'm not feeling happy. So I don't feel like eating much. They may have some feelings of guilt. They may have feelings of apathy. I refer to that as the whatever syndrome. It's like, whatever, They may have difficulty concentrating. So what we consider to be low levels of concentration may be another symptom. Low levels of energy, my husband refers to that as I can't get out of my own way today. Just having one of those days where it's like, I can't get my motor started.
Yeah.
That may be a sign. And of course, in extreme cases, we have people that are, think about harming themselves. And that's not so much what we're going to talk about today. We're talking about more of a mild depression brought on by something. And we're going to talk about some of the things that can bring that on. But sometimes we see some other symptoms as well. And these can be a little confusing. Sometimes we see things like what we consider to be cognitive impairment. That might come off as, either confusion or memory loss. And of course, with an older adult, they and their family sometimes immediately think of, dementia or Alzheimer's disease. It may be that, but it might not be. It may just be a form of depression. It's just like, so I can't really remember because who cares? They're going through that apathetic thing.
Right.
So sometimes a short attention span. And then sometimes, too, that slow speed of movement. Again, just a lack of energy. Can't get out of my own way. When you're feeling sad, your shoulders tend to droop. You kind of have that drooping. And when you're happy, you tend to be more upbeat. And so, there's very much of that body, mind, spirit, right, Harry? We're Springfield College grads. So
Absolutely.
anyway, yeah. So those are some of the symptoms.
So when we talk about that, symptoms are they're brought on by triggers, essentially, causes.
Correct. Yeah.
So what causes can we look at that bring these symptoms on that people are experiencing?
Absolutely. Good question. So there are several different things. And, every person is different. And so some things might not bother someone as much as someone else. So in older adults, one of the causes that we see for sadness or depression is our losses. I mean, there are a lot of losses that older adults can experience in their life. It might be the death of family members. It might be the death of a spouse, of a sibling, of their best friend, of, their neighbor. So certainly that's a loss. It could be the loss of financial security. Maybe this was someone who was working and maybe it was a job that didn't pay a lot of money, but it met all the expenses, got the rent paid or the mortgage paid or whatever. And now I'm too old to work or I have health issues and I can't work. And, we have a lot of older adults that are living just on Social Security. And so there's that financial loss. That can trigger a sadness because now I don't have that extra money maybe to take a little vacation or to go out to dinner once in a while.
Right.
So that can be a problem. Certainly the loss of health, either their own health or the health of people that they're close to. So that can trigger it. And then losses like functional abilities, somebody who, maybe was used to driving and can't drive anymore.
Oh, that's a
or
huge
someone
one.
That's a huge one.
Right.
Someone who was used to, cleaning their own house and maybe now either whether it might be breathing problems, it might be mobility problems, maybe they have a bum knee or a bum hip and so they can't do those things that they used to do. So all of those can trigger sadness or depression. And each loss sort of increases the person's vulnerability to sadness. So if somebody has one of those, it's one thing. But when you start having multiple losses, I've got my own health problem, money's a problem, I just lost my best friend, you start adding and adding and adding, and those can really trigger some feelings of depression or sadness. So that's one area, losses. Another area might be physical illness. There are some physical problems that especially older adults have that where sadness or depression can be a side effect. So certain strokes, if the person has the stroke and a certain part of the brain has been affected, we see it's really interesting with strokes because strokes tend to be the right side or left side of the brain that's affected. One of the sides, you see, people are very aware they've had a stroke, and we see depression as a side effect of that. Interestingly, though, the other side, if the stroke is on the other side, the person is kind of unaware that they've even had a stroke. I've seen people try to get up and walk around when they're paralyzed on one side, kind of being unaware that they've had a stroke. But certainly depression can be an effect of that. We're starting to link some depression as well with some heart issues and heart surgery. So that's an area that's getting some research right now. And then there's also what we call seasonal affective disorder. And of course, the acronym for that is SAD, S-A-D. And that's when people get sad during certain times of the year. So it's very common. We see it a lot at the holidays, Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving. But we also see it sometimes around maybe a wedding anniversary or a special birthday, especially if someone has lost a spouse. So, they're all things where we think to ourselves, well, though that's a normal reaction. Of course you're going to be sad. So, but those are some of the triggers for that.
Is seasonal, that's seasonal. I'm thinking about weather-related. You hear about weather-related.
Well, weather-related is very interesting, too, because, there have been some studies done on different regions of the country. And, there's that section in Alaska where in the winter where it's dark for however many ridiculous number of hours. There's a lot that has to do with lightness and darkness, not just hot and cold, because obviously we live in New England, we deal with, snow and we deal with all that. But it's interesting, when Gary and I were living in Iowa, when he was going to chiropractic school, Iowa winters they're brutal. And we went through the first winter there where it never got above zero for 3 weeks.
Right.
But the problem was that it also was very gray. They didn't get a lot of snow, but they would get a lot of ice and sleet, and it was just very gray, very windy. And I remember moving to New England after Gary got his finished school and started practicing here. And the first winter that we were here, we had this massive snowstorm, and the next day, it was -4, but the sun was just so strong. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. And, people were moaning and groaning. We were all shoveling out our cars, and, people were like, oh, this is so, I hate this. And I was just like, this is great. I mean, yes, it's cold, but that sun was just amazing. And so what a different feeling from the previous year when I was in Iowa, just because, again, of that, it had to do with more lightness and darkness, the brightness. And there's a lot of light therapy that's actually being done now, too, with, the use of lights to overcome depression and things.
To your point, I'm definitely a summer person. And my wife Ann and I were just commenting yesterday how long the days are now. I mean, it's at 8 o'clock. It's still dusky.
Yep.
And this past summer, we actually went to Alaska on a trip and experienced, quite frankly, daylight that it never got totally dark.
Yeah.
At 11 o'clock at night or 11:30 at night, I'm saying to Ann, because the sun had just gone down, so it's still very light. It's not even real dusky yet. I'm saying to Ann, we've got to go to bed. We can't wait for it to get dark because morning is going to be here, and you wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning, and it's still just kind of hazy light. It never gets totally dark.
Yeah.
But in the middle of winter, they flip the other way. They're only getting like 4 hours of sunlight, and it does affect it. I noticed even yesterday. Yesterday was a very gray day.
Yes.
It was cloudy all day.
Yep.
And I wasn't as excited about getting outside and doing stuff. And then about 5 o'clock, the front changed. All of a sudden, the sun comes out. And I felt that uplifting. Oh my God, look at the sun shadowing off the trees, and
Yeah.
the leaves are coming out, and there's no question that I feel more upbeat
Yeah.
and more excited about being alive
Yes.
when it's sunny
Yep.
than when it's dark.
And I think a lot of this, Harry, has to do with knowing that and understanding that, so that you can sort of arm yourself.
Right.
If you wake up or if you're watching the news and oh, tomorrow's going to be a rainy day, is to kind of have a plan in your head, ahead of time. We're going to talk about that in just a minute, to talk about sort of the recipe for what do you do about this, because there are things that people can
Right,
do.
right.
And one of them is just being more aware of that. It's like, okay, this is not going to be that wonderful sunny day where I know I'm going to be in a great mood because, I can open the windows and breathe in the fresh air. This is going to be kind of a cloudy or rainy or damp or cold day. So if you're prepared for that, and maybe you have, and we're going to talk about maybe some things that you could do, then you'll kind of get through that.
Yeah, that sounds like a great lead in. So let's talk about what's the to-do list? How do you overcome
this?
How do we overcome these
This
issues?
is Tina Gorman's recipe. And it's so funny because this is years of working in the field. I've been working with older adults for over 40 years now, which is hard to believe for me. And I taught at Springfield College, as you mentioned, when we first started, for 12 years. And so, we talked about this. I've talked about this with my students. And working with older adults for so many years, this really is not a list that I opened up a book on depression and there was the chapter on what do you do about it.
Sure.
This is really years of, some research and just experience and working with other people, and of putting together a very practical list for older adults so that they can help themselves. So we're going to start with what's called cognitive therapy. So cognitive therapy, the theory behind it is that a negative view of yourself or the world or the future contributes to your sadness. And the strategy for monitoring those cognitive distortions, so cognitive meaning it's what you're thinking, not so much what you're feeling, but what you're thinking. There are ways that you can sort of reprogram how you think about things. One of the things I see seniors do it all the time, and I do it myself sometimes, is all or nothing thinking, or what we call overgeneralizations. Like all college kids are, a problem, or, all old people can't drive, or, what I mean? We all do it. Everybody has their those cognitive distortions.
Yep,
So,
I'm guilty.
For example, I'll give the example of my dad, because my father was an avid reader, an avid stamp collector, and he was a lover of music, like good, really good music. And he had back in the day, this was back in the 60s, he had a beautiful stereo system and, albums and so forth. My father literally lost 75% of his vision overnight.
Oh, wow.
It's a very rare visual, problem that he had. And he woke up, he had no vision in one eye and about 50% of the vision. He had lost the top half. And he went into a very, very bad depression. And I think his feeling was, well, look at what he loved to do. He loved to read. He loved to collect stamps, which growing up, to me, it just looked like you moved stamps from this album to that album, but he was happy with that. And then listening to music. And, overgeneralization, his feeling was, well, I can't read, I can't collect stamps, what is there to do? And he really, kind of went into this funk of just kind of sitting and sort of half staring into space.
Right.
Now, the distortion with that is that there's nothing I can do about that. Over time, we were able to work with him to say, well, you can't do things the way you did them before. You can't open up a regular book with regular print and read it. But gee, we have large print books. We have books on tape. We have, and so he started to get into, and my mother would listen with him, and they would, in those days, they would put on the cassette tape and, listen to, now it's, whatever it is, a CD, and they would just, start to listen to books on tape. And then, of course, with computers coming in, you can magnify the font on a computer. So we have people in our low vision group at the senior center, and you can. So it's taking that thinking let's bring it to today. So now I'm hearing, well, I have to shelter in place. I'm missing out on everything. I can't see my grandchildren. You know, I can't see my grandbabies. You know, they're so cute, and by the time I get to hold them again, you know, they're going to be
Right.
3 or 4 or 5 months older than they are now. So again, how can we change that thinking of, you're right, you can't do it the way you've always done it, but how can we do things differently? And what we're starting to see, I think everyone is seeing, everybody just being a lot more creative with how we connect with people, how we stay connected with our families. You know, some people are Zooming. Not everybody can do that. You know, I have a lot of seniors who are not computer savvy or
Right.
they don't own a computer. Well, you get on the phone and you call somebody,
Right.
you know, or we see people that are, you know, visiting on, I'm on the inside of the house. We open up the window. You're on the outside of the house, and I'm visiting with my grandkids. They're on the porch and I'm inside. Or I'm on the porch and they're in a lawn chair 10 feet away,
Yeah.
you know, and we're wearing masks.
Very, very
So,
true.
you know, just
Right.
different ways to do things. And I think that that's really important. So cognitive thinking, which is changing the way you think about your sadness and your predicament, and sort of, I always kind of look at it as I'm a solution seeker. I mean, and I think a lot of people that are, you know, I'm the head of a department. I think a lot of people that get to that position, you have to be a solution seeker, because otherwise, you know, you're going to kind of get left behind.
Right.
So that has to do with that. Let's talk about something else people can do, activity. Activity is incredibly important. People need a reason to get up in the morning.
Absolutely.
It's so important to have a reason to get up in the morning, and it's really difficult. This is a Wayne Dyer, for those of you who know, he was a psychologist who recently passed away. But, you know, Wayne Dyer always said, it's very hard to be depressed or sad when you're busy, when you're doing something. And, you know, how many people who have lost jobs or are furloughed are complaining that their biggest problem is, I don't know what to do. I was used to getting up and going to work and running and going. So even small increases in activity can really boost somebody's mood significantly. So what I tell the seniors that I work with, have a project. You know, today you're going to clean out a drawer. You know, that cabinet that I did it over the weekend. Who contacted me? So, Mark Carbonell contacted me over the weekend. What are you doing? Are you working today? Or are you going to the senior center? I said, no, I'm pulling apart my kitchen. I said, I've had, you know, because I had things that I needed to put away.
This is the
and
time
I went to
do
put them
it.
away, and there wasn't any room. And I thought, well, all right, let me clean off this shelf. And then you find out I've got all this food that's expired. So I start pulling out shelves. And, you know, before I knew it, I was rearranging my whole kitchen. But, you know, but it kept me busy all day. I didn't have time to think about, gee, am I sad? Am I not?
Right.
You know, what kind of a day is it?
Being
Raining
productive.
outside? Who knows? I tell my seniors, sort out your photographs. All those, I mean, I have seniors that have photographs in every room in the book. You know, we have a few thrown in this drawer. I got an envelope over here. My grandkids gave me get them all together. Put them in some kind of a chronological order. You know, sort them out. Maybe put them in albums, but or just put them even in boxes. But if they're in some kind of an order, you're doing a lot of things. You're reminiscing, you're going through, you're looking at pictures. Remember this was so funny, or this was so sad, or, you know, whatever it was. So there's another project.
You know, I love that one particularly, because as we get older, and I'm actually starting to think about that myself, is that, you know, when we were kids growing up, we would see boxes of all these pictures from my parents. They weren't labeled. They weren't dated. You had no clue. They knew who were in the
Right.
pictures.
You don't even know who was in the picture.
We don't even know who they are. And so now that I'm in my adult years and my parents have left us, unfortunately, my wife and I look at these pictures, I'm saying, we might as well throw them away.
Right.
Because I have no one to give them to.
Right.
And whoever I do give them to, I don't know who they are. So we got into the practice of dating photographs and actually writing on the back of
Yep.
them who's in those, so that as they get passed down, people will know. And I love your idea of putting them in an order. It's creating a sense of order to your life, quite frankly.
Yep.
It gives you a reason to look at what it is that you did, you accomplished, who was important in your life, and you can share that with your loved ones who you're going to leave those with. That's a
Exactly.
fabulous activity.
Yeah, so that's a great one. We have some people that are starting to do things like plant flowers, or maybe they've never had a vegetable garden, and I just say start with something, just plant a few tomatoes. see how it goes. It's something. There's something about growing
Right.
plants or flowers or herbs. It's like, oh, okay, I've never tried that before. Let's try it.
I love it.
So I think that's something. Do a puzzle. I mean, I have a lot of seniors that are real puzzle people. Puzzles are great for their keeping their eyes sharp, keeping their fingers nimble. That's kind of a nice rainy day project. That's something that's good. Write a letter. I mean, snail mail.
Yeah.
People still love getting mail.
Right.
They love getting mail. Seniors love getting mail. So send a letter to the lady who was your bridesmaid in your wedding party. You know what I mean? Who lives in Oregon or someplace. So. Or email if people are computer savvy, or call somebody, walk the dog. I mean, anything that's, again, a reason to get up in the morning. And sometimes it's helpful to think the day before, especially if maybe the weather's not going to be so great. Okay, so what am I going to do tomorrow so that I know when I open my eyes, okay, I was going to write a letter to, my friend Gertrude, or, whatever the plan was.
The concept of writing, I love that idea. And quite frankly, my wife, who's also a puzzle person, we always have at least one puzzle going on in the house. I'm not. I could 30 seconds into the puzzle, I'm like, I'm done. I can't sit still that long. Ann loves puzzles, but she's very good at writing notes. And we're constantly getting notes back from people that she writes to, and it's really a lost art. And there's something really personal about writing and getting a nice piece of stationery or a card and writing a note and sending it to someone. That says, in today's fast-paced world, I'm taking the time out for you. I care enough about you that I'm willing to write a note. And what a phenomenal statement that makes. And how good do you feel when you receive a letter or a note from somebody?
You know what, Harry?
I love that.
We've been getting, when we do the meal program at the senior center, the curbside pickup, we have a red bucket, and it's on a cart. So when people pull up, they put their money in the bucket, and then we put the meals in another tub, and we spin the cart around, and they take their meals out. And, a lot of the seniors have taken to putting their money in the bucket, and then there's a lot of times another envelope. There's a card. There's a note.
How nice. We
got a note the other day from one of the seniors who had participated in the Mother's Day luncheon. She saw Noah Liss on TV. She won one of we couldn't call it a door prize, so it was a curbside prize, and she won one of those. She wrote us the most lovely note, and all of those notes get displayed at the senior center for the staff. So that one is front and center on the refrigerator. I said to the staff when they came in yesterday, you have to read the note that I put up on the refrigerator. I had opened it up and taped it. And, you could tell she really took the time. I mean, it wasn't just thank you. It was a note, and she was specific. I mean, the staff was just really overwhelmed.
What a way to share your emotions and your feelings, and look at the reception of the people who are reading it.
Absolutely.
And what it meant to them. So
because
great,
I think it's,
great suggestion.
So do that.
Right.
And, as we're talking about activity and a reason to get up in the morning, that dovetails right into the next thing that we're going to talk about, which I know is near and dear to your heart.
As
Harry,
yours as well.
It is, which is exercise.
Exercise
is task-oriented. It increases your feeling of accomplishment. You feel like I've done something.
You've done something
this was
for
great. I
yourself,
feel good about myself.
Yep.
It stimulates movement. It cuts down on that just sitting around stuff. But it also stimulates biochemical processes in the brain. That helps to reduce stress. It promotes muscle tone. So one of the things that we've been trying to do during the COVID-19, because of course we have a very active fitness program at the senior center, which right now we're closed, to the public. The fitness room is not available. So we've been trying to put some programming on Channel 15. So this month in May, we had Terry Summers doing her chair yoga class.
It was excellent.
Which is awesome. That's Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2. The interesting thing about that is, again, as people are coming through the meal line, we're hearing the feedback, and they're saying those who you normally attended the class with Terry are saying this was wonderful. This is great. I love it. I can do this in my living room. But we also have people who said, I never tried chair yoga, but I thought, well, what the heck? I'm at home. I'm not doing anything. It's on TV. I read about it in the newsletter. And so we have people that are doing that.
My wife, Ann, followed along.
Yes, you were saying that. I think
she loved
great.
it.
Yeah.
Because she takes yoga at the Y, but the Y's been shut down for 8 weeks.
Well.
She hasn't been doing anything at home like that. And so it came on. I knew about it. And next thing I know, she's sitting at the table next to me. She's got her chair pulled out. She's doing all the movements and stuff, and she loved it.
Well, it's really interesting because I feel like at some point I'm going to try it because normally, I'm working when Terry's doing the class. I've never done it, and I thought, hey, I can do this now. And there is a way also you can live stream it on a computer. So I have some people who don't have they don't have their local cable channel, but they have computers. So in the June newsletter, I'm going to explain to people. I have a little handout for them that we're giving to people, but that will be in the newsletter of how you can live stream it that way.
Excellent.
So we've got that. My husband, Dr. Gary Gorman, and my daughter Grace did a stretching program for May. They just updated it and did a movin' and groovin' with Dr. G and Grace, and that will be aired in June. So we'll start playing that one next month in June.
Yeah, we watched the first one. And it was excellent.
Yeah.
And he's so good about describing. Your daughter's a great patient, by the way. She's a great
it's
person
really
to work on.
interesting because Grace has been working with her job before she moved back home. Before all of this happened, she was working with adults with disabilities in a day hab program in Plymouth.
Oh,
and
my
they
goodness.
had 2 gyms and an indoor pool. So they were it was a very structured day program. So, Grace was also kind of contributing when they were coming up with the exercises. Well, what about this? And let's do that. And I used to do this with my clients.
Right.
And so, but anyway, exercise,
excellent.
Can't say enough about it.
Absolutely.
We talked a little bit when we talked about the photographs about reminiscing, or what we call the life review.
Oh,
and
yes.
this is just, this is where you can really connect. Older people can really connect with their children and their grandchildren. This is a perfect time. The kids are out of school. You can do it over the phone. You can do it, again, sitting outside. Somebody's on a lawn chair here and somebody's on the porch, and just talking to them about your life. And you can do it in segments. So what was elementary school like for you, Graham, when you were, back 6 and 7 and 8 years old? And what were the teachers like back then? And what was the school like? And there are just a million stories. I tell my seniors, segment it. So maybe your wedding, how did you meet grandpa? How did you meet grandma? What was that all about? And I always tell, I used to do this with my students when I was teaching at Springfield College. They all had to do a life review of somebody generally that they knew. I said, do it with a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle or whatever. And it was so funny because inevitably my students would come back to me and say, well, I thought I knew everything about my grandma. And then I found out, one student came back to me and said, I found out my grandmother was a Rockette. Never knew that. She was a Rockette for like a year and a half. There were some amazing stories of what some of the students came back with. So your first job, what was it like? What was it like getting a job before Indeed.com? What was that? How did you find jobs?
Right.
How did you learn about them?
Sure.
We didn't have cell phones. You had classified ads in the newspaper. And what about raising children? What was it like raising children? What was mom and dad? What were mom and dad like as kids? We hear their side of it, but Grandpa, what was your side of it? So those are all just really, they're priceless stories. And I did that with my own grandparents. And my grandfather had, he was telling stories from the 1920s. He grew up in New York City in a tenement, no money. And the way that they entertained themselves, and we would just be howling as kids over some things that he did. So this is a really great opportunity.
I love that
to
idea.
do that.
Absolutely. Family history.
Family history, right? So reminiscing. Music is really wonderful for people who are feeling blue, feeling down in the dumps, feeling punk. Music can induce relaxation. It can promote healing. There are surgeons that play music while they're doing surgery, both for themselves and for the patient. There's a lot of research that's been done on the therapeutic value of music. That's a whole other presentation that I can do, and I actually have done that.
Well, we'll do that.
But that's really wonderful because music cuts through the boundaries of age. Even if it's music in another language that you don't even understand the language, just from the beat and the melody and the rhythm, you can really get into that. So if you're feeling down, I used to do this with my dad. He would, if I knew he was having a bad day, I would like put on an old Mitch Miller record, and we'd be singing along with Mitch. Remember, sing along with Mitch.
I do remember
Follow the
that.
bouncing ball.
Oh my
Or
gosh,
we'd
yeah.
be or I'd put on like he would love like patriotic marching music, so we would do that, and then we'd be to do some exercise. We'd be in the chair. We'd be marching in place, and, doing all kinds of stuff. And you could be crazy. I mean, put on your favorite. When I was in college, disco was the big thing, so put on your favorite disco and, just dance around your bedroom. You can be as silly and as fun as you want to be, but
Yeah,
music
very
can
true.
be really,
Yeah.
really helpful for that.
Yep.
Another activity for overcoming sadness or depression is cooking or baking. A lot of people love to do that, enjoy doing that. And a lot of people have said to me, well, I really enjoy it, but I don't have the time. So maybe now you have the time. And now you can really get creative, because with so few trips to the grocery store, you have to kind of use whatever you have. And so,
That is true.
make up a concoction, open up the
Right.
cupboard and say, well, what
Be
do I have
creative.
here? What can I throw together? And if you have access to the internet, the sky's the limit with cooking and baking. My daughter Grace is going through, she's more of a baker, and she's just having a ball. She made these they're like protein cupcakes, but I don't know what they call them, but I didn't know what was in them, and she made them the other day. They have some chocolate chips, but they've got bananas and peanut butter and
Oh my goodness.
and
Wow.
rolled oats. And I said, "Oh wow!" I said, "Those are healthy." I mean, she goes, "Well, yeah." She said, "Mom, these are protein tidbits or whatever they call them. They're fillings." She said, "Yeah, I had one for breakfast." Not anything she's ever done before or had before, but she said, "Yeah, the recipe looked good and." Had the ingredients,
not?
and
Yeah,
so why
sure.
not? So try some.
Oh,
try
good
some
for
new
her. Yeah,
things and,
awesome.
share them with your family. Another thing, we talked a little bit about health issues for people and how sometimes those health issues can lead to sadness or depression. And I have found that if you can get information, if you're a newly diagnosed diabetic, or you have arthritis, or, the doctor said you've got, you're having TIAs, transient ischemic attacks, which are mini strokes. I found that the more information that you can get, the more in control you feel. Because generally what drives people to be sad when they've got health issues is that they feel out of control. Like my dad did with the vision. It was like, I don't understand this, and this has completely changed my life. But when we went online and, we were able to research it and talk to the doctor and what caused it, it was irreversible, unfortunately. But having a better understanding of this wasn't your fault, it's not anything you did wrong, or, it's one of those 1 in a million kinds of things. But then being able to say, okay, but here are some strategies for how you have to make some changes in your life. So I think getting some information about things puts people more in control, so that if there are some things that they can do, for instance, if they're a diabetic, there certainly are strategies. There are things you can do. So learning what exactly diabetes is, and then, okay, how do I need to alter my lifestyle, my eating habits? Those are things that people have control over. Same if the doctor says you have high blood pressure, or you have a heart condition. There are always things that you can do once you're armed with some knowledge to kind of put yourself a little bit more in control. And when you're more in control, people tend to be less sad and depressed about it, and more feeling like, okay, well, I can do something about this.
Yeah, control over your life is no question. That's a big factor.
Absolutely. The next one, I would say, Harry, is probably the next two are really the most important things to remember. This one is people need goals to look forward to, whether they're big goals or small goals, in order to not be sad, to maintain some level of contentment. You really need things to look forward to. This has been, I think, especially difficult during this COVID-19.
Yes,
We've had so many things that have been canceled, big things, weddings, graduations, special birthday parties, maybe an 80th birthday party or a 16th birthday party. And as those things have been canceled, people feel really deflated. Well, I was really looking forward to, we had a family wedding that was supposed to be in July. And I know people's like, oh, I was really looking forward to my grandson getting married, and now they had to postpone it for a year. So that's really hard. And people can shut down and just say, man, this just stinks. I'm so unhappy about this. So my advice, I think, especially for getting through COVID-19, but honestly, for a lot of older adults, it's their everyday life. Think small. Think of small goals that again give you a reason to get up in the morning, but also something to look forward to. So maybe I do it. If I thought of just like the only thing I had was just like go to the senior center and work every day, as much as I love my job, it's like,
Right.
yeah, my sister-in-law called me the other night and she left me a voicemail. Call me this week. So Gary said to me, my husband said to me, are you going to call Marianne? I said, I'm going to wait a few days because that's my goal. That's one of my goals that I'm looking forward to. I know that's going to be a great phone call. They're down in the Baltimore area, and my brother's down there, and I just enjoy talking to them. So I'm like, I'm going to ration this out. I think I'm going to call them on Wednesday. That'll kind of be the middle of the week. Honestly, it's like giving me something to look forward to. So it might be a phone call. It might be a favorite TV show, or maybe a movie that you've wanted to see, or maybe an old movie that you're going to you want to watch again. It could be, I really enjoy my walks outside with my husband, Gary.
Yeah.
And we're doing a lot more of that now.
Yeah, Ann and I walk every day.
And, it's funny, Harry, you were saying exactly what happened to us last night. We got home and we had a friend come over and, we were outside distancing. And then Gary said, well, do you want to go for a walk? Well, it was like 6:45. And I said, wow, it's kind of late. But yes, we'll go for maybe a half hour. Well, we walked for an hour and it was still light out. But, again, that was something to look forward to.
Right.
So maybe you'll look forward to a walk down the street. Maybe you'll be able to wave to some of your neighbors or see some of the kids out on the bikes. It might be a good book. It might be we're having people coming through the lunch line asking for books because we have books in the senior center.
Right.
And if they're asking for specific authors, I can kind of go through and pull those because we have them in alphabetical order. It might be a takeout meal, okay, Friday we're going to do takeout. You know what happened last week? I had a woman call me on Friday, one of our regulars, one of our seniors, and she said, I'm getting a meal at the senior center, and my friend who also normally goes to the senior center is getting a meal. I'm going to pick up both of our meals, and then she's going to come over, and we're going to be in my garage, and I have a lawn chair on one side and a lawn chair on the other, and we're going to have our takeout meal from the senior center together.
Oh, nice.
Having a visit. That's called being creative. You have to take what you have to work with.
Right.
Instead of, I'm isolated, I'm by myself, I'm not even hungry. It was something to look forward to. So they had talked about that and planned it, and it was like, let's do that. I was like, it's perfect.
Oh, that's great. I mentioned earlier that my wife and our anniversary is this Saturday, and just this morning Ann was saying, because I'm going shopping after this, so I go once a week. That's my big week out. That's my big field trip. I go to Big Y and go shopping. So that's where I'm headed for now. And so typically we buy a lot of these prepared soups because they're just easy. We can microwave them, throw in some cornbread or whatever else we're going to have, salad. And Ann said today, she says, on Saturday, we're doing takeout.
Yes.
She says, I am not having any more of these store-bought foods. We're doing takeout.
That's right.
Okay, we'll be doing takeout.
That's right.
That's going to be our big special thing.
So that's something for her to look forward to.
She is absolutely looking forward to it.
That's like that's your celebration. That's your anniversary celebration.
Yeah. These are great suggestions, Tina.
Well,
really
the funny thing is it all brings it to the end when I talked about these seniors having their meal together. And the key of overcoming or dealing with sadness, blues, depression, punk, down in the dumps, melancholy, whatever you call it, is having emotional connections. That is so important because people who are isolated and people who are inactive, there's your recipe for depression. Mm-hmm. So if we can work on the isolation piece and the inactivity piece, we have to do it creatively in this day and age. Mm-hmm. But if we can work on that, that's what's going to keep people, feeling content and in some cases even upbeat and really happy in some cases, because we found that isolation is a powerful risk factor for poor health.
Yeah.
And everybody needs, support. I mean, we've done over 400 phone calls now to our regular seniors who come to the senior center, whether it's for lunch, for the Do-Re-Mi choral group, for bingo, for fitness classes. We are literally taking our lists of those who come for those different activities. And one by one, I have staff members calling those people. I call them friendly phone chats just to check in. Now, if somebody's is really experiencing some problems, those people are going to get referred to our outreach worker, and Joanne Artegas will work on them if it's crisis intervention or whatever. But by and large, most people are just so appreciative to just chit chat over the phone and just, tell you whatever they're doing or whatever's going on, or find out what's going on with you. And so that's really a piece. People really need emotional connections. And I just want to finish, it was interesting. I've talked, when I used to teach, I used to talk about the Harvard study of adult development, which was a longitudinal study. That means it was done over many, many years. That study's actually 80 years old now.
Wow.
And one of the people who participated, what they did was they followed, I'm going to use my cheat sheet, 268 Harvard graduates from the classes that those who graduated between 1939 and 1944. And they've continued to follow them to this day. So that study is, well over 80 years old. One of the original participants was President John Kennedy.
Oh, my goodness.
Yep. But and of course, a lot of the original of the 268 have now passed away. But over the years, what they did, and it was a rigorous study. I mean, every year there was I think a survey that they filled out, and then every 2 years, something a little bit more involved. And then every 5 years, they actually brought the people, they actually did I think they brought them to Harvard.
Okay.
They went to the home. But, they were looking at things like why were they aging more successfully, if we could kind of use that term, successful aging? Why did they seem more content? And they looked at all kinds of things. They looked at their physical health. They looked at their, were they married? Were they not married? Did they have children? What about their job? What about their income? They looked at all of those things. And the funny thing is they found, and I'm going to finish with this, they found 4 things that were important to healthy and successful aging. One was an orientation toward the future, so that people, even as they were aging, were always looking at not just yesterday, because those memories are great, and not just today, which is okay, what am I doing today, but really sort of having a healthy attitude about tomorrow. I'm not finished yet. I have things I want to do. I've never done a 10K. That's on my bucket list. I've done 5Ks.
You haven't?
No, I have not.
Oh.
Not yet. But I'm going to do it.
Good for you.
That's on my bucket list. So, it's sort of that orientation to the future.
Good for you.
So
I love it.
One.
Love it.
Another thing that the Harvard study found was gratitude, forgiveness, and optimism. That we need to see the glass as half full, not half empty. That was another attribute of successful aging. The third one was empathy. So to be able to kind of walk in the shoes of somebody else or see the perspective of someone else. And the last one was the ability to reach out. So again, that desire to be with other people. And again, right now with COVID-19, we can't safely do that physically, but there are a lot of creative ways that we can do that.
Right.
So there's your recipe for, I don't want to say recipe for happiness, but certainly recipe, we hope, for contentment and for being able to take charge and say, you know what, I am feeling down in the dumps. I gotta work on this.
Right.
And those are some ways that people can work on it.
Well, this has been a fascinating discussion. And, my mom passed away just about 2 years ago now. And she was 92 at the time. So I'm relating a lot of what you've talked about, because these are discussions that I would have with her. And certainly as my wife and I are now well into our 60s, we're feeling some of these same kinds of issues and stuff. So I think it's important, and I think it's normal, as you pointed out, to feel a little bit of melancholy and to maybe be a little depressed at times or not be as happy as you normally feel. That's part of just what normal everyday life is, especially as you get older and you have less family around and maybe your spouse is no longer with you. So those are normal. But I think what comes across, Tina, and you do it so well, is the fact that people, I had always had this phrase that I love life and I'm not done living it. Mm-hmm. We're not done living it. Right. We're social creatures, so we have to be creative in how we reach out to others so that we can feel that bond of togetherness, that sense of empathy. We're talking about what each other is doing, so we can be creative in how to do that. But the important thing is to recognize that we're still alive, and there's still a lot of great things out there to embrace and to be excited about and to try for a first time. And the list that you have provided has been phenomenal. And I'm guessing as I listen to this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of questions I had for you, but in the respect of time, I said, okay, Harry, keep your mouth.
Luckily, I'm not looking at the clock because
Right,
I already
we're
know I
not.
went over. But
We're okay. We're still doing fine, but it's a great topic.
Yeah.
But I think that for our seniors out there and anyone that's really feeling some of these issues or these afflictions, these emotions, know that they're normal.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
you have a phenomenal resource to reach out to, and that's the Westfield Senior Center. So make sure that you get in, talk to Tina Gorman or one of her staff, because she can help you, and their staff is trained to help you deal with these. Don't feel that you're the only one that is being affected by this. This is normal, being a human being.
Yeah.
But there's resources out there, and there are people who can absolutely help you move forward and keep your life feeling as happy and as fulfilled as possible. And we're fortunate here in Westfield that we have such a phenomenal, active senior center.
Yeah.
And the Council on Aging has just been phenomenal. And I give you a lot of credit, Tina Gorman.
Thank you.
Your leadership as our executive director, there's no question that when you think about like the Westfield 350, who was the head of Westfield 350? Harry Rock.
Harry Rock.
Who's in charge of the seniors? Tina Gorman.
There you go.
Who's in charge of the senior center? Tina Gorman. I just love your effervescent, positive spirit, your lovely smile. There's no question that you bring a lot of joy and happiness into people's lives. And I think that what's important is for people to recognize that there are resources there available to them, and they just need to take advantage of them.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up here, I do want to thank you, Tina Gorman. This is your show,
Thank
but I want to
you.
thank you
Oh,
for coming in.
Thank you for hosting.
Again, as Executive Director of the Westfield Council on Aging and the Westfield Senior Center, done an outstanding job
Thank you.
explaining really a difficult subject. Tina is the person that's behind the creation of this educational series of topics that's part of the WCPC Cable Channel 15 called the Westfield Council on Aging Presents. We've had a number of topics already. You can go online to see the other ones or simply call the Westfield Senior Center to find out what other topics you can watch that are part of WCPC Channel 15. So along with our producer, Pete Coles, I'm your host, Harry Rock. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next show.